Wednesday, August 10th. Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. It is the mailbag. That's Arm Layden. I'm Peter Apple. We have a bunch of phenomenal questions that were asked on our Twitter at Just BB Media and on our Instagram at Just Baseball Show. Remember, we do this every 2 weeks. Make sure you get your questions in when we post that normally on Tuesday. Arm, before we get into the questions, we have some news that's kind of unfortunate. Definitely unfortunate for the Boston Red Sox. Not as unfortunate for other teams who are going to go up against them, but definitely for the entire league, it's not good. Chris Sale now out for the season after falling off his bike, broke his wrist. What's your first reaction, I guess?
This guy's cursed. It's crazy. I mean, I really feel for Chris Sale because you'd imagine he's worked his butt off to get back from multiple injuries, and then of course on the mound, then messes the finger up, and you could see the defeat when he broke his finger. He's just like, I don't know, what to do. Like, this is ridiculous. You could just see how defeated he felt, and then I can't imagine how he felt after finding out that he broke his wrist off the bike. I mean, to just lose another year for a guy that was kind of on a Hall of Fame track if he had last year and a good year this year, and you figure out a few more years in the tank. It definitely hurts. And the Red Sox, I mean, look, we talked about how they've been a disappointment. I know you mentioned that in yesterday's episode, and we've talked about that a bunch. If they had any chance to survive this year, it kind of hinged on Chris Sale coming back at some point. And I think that's kind of the final nail in the coffin. It's pretty sad because he's fun to watch when he can pitch. He's fun to watch when he's out there. And unfortunately, we won't see him until next year.
Chris Sale led the league in innings back in 2017 in his first year with Boston. 2018, he throws 158 innings, puts up a 2.11 ERA. 2019 happens, 147 innings. He's got a 4.40 ERA. 2021, he throws 42 innings. This year, he's only thrown a total of 5 2/3.
That one start.
12 years now in the league. I'm not saying this is the beginning of the end, but we are looking at a guy who is already getting up there in age. And I think to myself, he's a 7-time All-Star. How many more Chris Sale years are we even going to have? And remember, they signed him to a pretty extensive extension. Extensive extension. Both of those words.
Yeah.
And now it just looks kind of bleak. And the Red Sox, I mean, this was the nail in the coffin, right? I think you said that. This is the nail in the coffin now because starting pitching was the issue. I mean, the offense, it goes through ups and downs. You still got Devers, still got Bogart, still got JD, or whatever Verdugo, I guess, can give you. But starting pitching in the bullpen, and when you don't have Chris Sale, the Orioles are going to finish above them, and they're most likely going to finish in last place.
And also, the Orioles look good. They just had a nice win. That was a fun game to watch. I loved the energy. They remind me so much of the Mariners, by the way. Just how fired up they were in Baltimore with that win. You could see the energy from like Rougned Odor at second base, just getting pumped up with the youngsters. But to wrap a bow on the Chris Sale thing, he's going to be 34 at the start of next year. You'd hope that he'll be able to come back healthy, given that these injuries, rib cage, finger, wrist, they're not arm related. So the arm will be rested, but of course you still need the rest of your body to pitch. And obviously the rest of his body is taking a bit of a beating. I do wonder how he broke his wrist on a bike. I'm picturing something kind of like, President Biden, that clip of him falling off, which we can laugh at now because he was fine, but that video made me laugh so hard. I'm picturing something like that from Chris Sale, where he just he's got long legs and shit. Maybe he got tied up and just fell right on the wrist. I don't know. It's amazing that President Biden fell at 70, whatever he is, and didn't break a wrist, and Chris Sale breaks a wrist. That's crazy. Was he going fast? What was happening? I don't know if we're going to get details on it, but pretty wild.
Speaking of his former team, the Chicago White Sox, this came out on Reddit, and there was a user called the real Pete Wheeler. He came out with something. The 2022 White Sox have now injured every possible anatomical region of the human body. And I quote, Some may remember this post from 3 weeks ago, so check that out on Reddit, in which it was established that the 2022 White Sox have been injured in nearly every region of the human body, over the past 365 days, with the sole exception of the left hand and wrist. With Tim Anderson now having torn a ligament in his left hand, he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, unfortunately for the White Sox. They have now injured every possible anatomical region of the human body over the last calendar year. Oh my dear Lord.
Like, that can like includes like eyeball? Like, what does that mean?
I don't know. That's just, are you kidding me? Yeah, what does that include? That is also very interesting. I mean,
but regardless, that is insane. Maybe they're just saying like the head, like the whole head.
Yes.
Like
concussion maybe is probably involved.
Concussion is the whole head.
Yeah.
Or like, but dude, like, I don't know. Is it bad luck? Is it training staff? Is it both? I mean, they were telling, we talked about this on the JB show earlier in the year when Tony La Russa came out and said, yeah, our trainers are telling our guys like not to bust it down the line. Like, you know, if they don't need to run it out, like just jog. They were told not to sprint at 100% to prevent injury. And obviously that still isn't really working. I just, some teams, man, you wonder what they're doing because most of these guys have their own routine. It's not like a college weight program where you can attribute, you know, something to the program and what they're putting their players through. Like, these guys do their own thing. It is pretty wild to see certain teams just so decimated by injury.
I think it has to be part training. If you remember, the Yankees were dealing with injuries, it seemed like every 15 minutes, you know, a couple of years ago. And then they revamped their entire training staff, brought in Matt Blake to revamp the pitching staff as well as the new pitching coach for the Yankees. And since then, they haven't been dealing with the same amount of injuries as in prior years. And those guys have only gotten older. Of course, Stanton has been on the shelf, and there's some injuries that you just can't control. I mean, sometimes guys just get injured. You could have the best training staff in the world, and it doesn't matter over 162. But I think that team has to take a good, hard look at that, because when you read that, there's no way that's just luck. Every part anatomically, that just doesn't even make sense. Reading that didn't make sense. When Elijah sent that, also shout out you, Elijah, and who's running great Twitter, doing a bunch of stuff here for Just Baseball. He sent that in. I almost didn't believe it.
Yeah, no, you're like, what, like, this has to just be a joke. Like, but it's really sad because the White Sox could be a lot better. I think obviously also has to do with just like throwing guys in the outfield that probably have no business being out there, like Eloy Jimenez and Andrew Vaughn, who have had multiple injuries of their own. Both guys should probably be DH and first base respectively. So that doesn't help either. But yeah, it's pretty wild. Reddit is a good place to get some fun facts like that for sure.
Also, another fun fact: Nico Horner, higher F-WAR this season than Juan Soto.
Cubs should have traded him for the same package. That is crazy though. That does show you how much bad defense can hamper your F-WAR. And yeah, Soto's been trash. And I do think that that's because of the fact that he was just in Washington, where he was probably tired of balls getting hit over his head. And like, it's just like pure effort at that point, right? I'm sure the defense will be better because he did work hard to improve it. I think he was just checked out in right field. I can't imagine how annoying it was. Like, Patrick Corbin gives up 10 runs and you're just standing there. Like, you want him to lay out in the gap down 8. Like, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
He also made a really good play up against the wall in Monday's game against the Giants, smacked up against the wall too. So I think your point is so right. I mean, it's like you're down 4, down 7. It's the bottom of the 7th inning and it's 7-0. And it's like, I could dive out for that, or I'm about to get traded or sign the biggest contract in MLB history. How about I not?
Yeah, I'll just catch it on a hop.
I'll
minus 1 out above average there. Like,
yeah, whatever. I'll take it. I'll take it for an extra $40 million a year from now. Let's get into the questions, Arm, because we have a ton of good ones. This is a great first one. What team do you think will have the best starting rotation in 3 years? Asked by @burner_Phillips. And just a reminder, if you want to have your questions answered, make sure you're following us on Twitter @JustBBMedia. That's in our episode description. And we'll be doing these every Wednesday, but posted on Tuesday to get your questions in on our Twitter. I have my answer to this question, but it's kind of a cop out. Do you want me to give mine, or do you want yours first?
You give yours, because if it's the one that I think it is, I can color in on the prospect side a little bit more, because I think there's a few guys that'll be up in a few years, but then we can pivot to some other options as well.
I'm gonna be lame here. I think the best rotation in 3 years is going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, no, it's not lame. It's correct.
I mean, yeah, what is it wrong? I mean, Julio Urias is 25. Bueller's still 28. Gonsolin is still 28. Kershaw will most likely have either moved on or
retired,
still pitching, maybe. I mean, with the back, he was already considering some of those moves into retirement at the end of last season. In 3 years, where will he be? Might not matter. I know the top pitching prospect in the Dodgers system is Bobby Miller, and you're going to come out with your top 100 updates soon, and he's certainly going to be in it. Fill in the gaps for me.
Yeah, and then of course you have Dustin May. That's going to come back.
How did I
very soon?
That?
Yeah, so like that's insane. And then one of my favorite pitching prospects in baseball, you were talking to me before, we were kind of talking about some surprise, like risers and where we might be higher on guys than others. Gavin Stone, he's starting to get that helium, but I mean, we're going to have Gavin Stone probably in the top 50. It's a guy that's 23, putting up video game numbers in AA right now. He'll be up in 3 years, and I think he could be he'll be up by next year. I think he could be a legit, middle of the rotation, maybe even number 2 type of starter. So that on top of Julio Urias, who may not even be in his prime yet, a healthy Walker Buehler, Dustin May, who we saw what he was in the midst of before he got hurt. It would be incorrect to give you any other one. It's lame because it's true, but we could definitely cite some other teams and some honorable mentions as well. But I mean, it's just a fact here. This team is just silly loaded with arms. It's ridiculous.
And not to mention, there will be more pitchers in the rotation that are not currently on their team right now.
Figure it out. Ryan Pepio could still figure it out. Like, that's a guy that's put up some really good numbers at points and has looked really good. Their first rounder, Maddox Bruns, could be up in 3 years. Like, there's still other guys, like you said, that could really, break out and be lights out starters too.
What about on the trade that you were talking about? The dude with long levers and extensions in the Blue Jays trade, Nick Frasso, they'll probably turn him into some sort of freak. And not even to mention the guys that they're going to sign for probably $400 million whenever they want to.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I love Frasso too. So yes, that's another guy that easily could.
Who are some honorable mentions? Because some of the guys that came to my mind is the way the Guardians are able to develop pitching.
Yeah.
But Bieber is going to be, I think, around 30, 31 in 3 years, right? Isn't he around 27, 28 years old?
I think so. Somewhere.
Then you have guys like Tristan McKenzie, who's a bit younger, but Daniel Espino seems to be one of the guys who's one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. My guy, Cal Quantrill, I'm throwing him in there. He's 27 years old. He's going to be a grizzled 30-year-old that he's probably going to be shoving still. But there's so many other names, too, that they're probably going to develop and draft. They're not the sexiest name, but I do think that they will be up there.
That was my number 2, brother, because I look at what McKenzie's done this year, right? And McKenzie seems to be making that leap, which is obviously huge. Shane Bieber is adjusted to still be able to get outs at a pretty high level, despite not throwing 95 as much as he used to. Quantrill, still a very solid arm to have in the rotation in the back end, or as a number 1, depending on who you ask.
Yes.
And then, no, you talk about the prospects. Daniel Espino has ace upside. Gavin Williams, ace upside. Both of those guys will be up within the next year. Then they have Logan Allen, who's going to be a top 100 prospect for us. Left-handed pitching prospect. He's already in AAA. Tanner Burns is disgusting. Like, they've got 6 or 7 arms that all could end up being exciting, big league type of starters. And I think with what they already have up there, they're a no-brainer option. I got to throw one of the few times I can actually spew some positivity on my Marlins. I think you got to have the Marlins in that equation. Of course, largely hinges on whether they keep Pablo or not, but I think there's a scenario where they keep Pablo. And if they do, you have Sandy Alcantara, who we have a question about him later, is very clearly right now pitching at the highest level in baseball, but I think you could say top 5 pitcher in baseball with relative ease. Pablo is phenomenal. You hope Max Meyer will obviously be back in 3 years from Tommy John surgery and be feeling pretty good. Yuri Perez is a top 3 pitching prospect in baseball. Jake Eder was looking like one of the better lefties. Who knows what's up with Sixto? Edward Cabrera, man, I was just in Chicago. That guy was dynamite. If he can stay healthy, that's a number 2 type of starter. We know the Marlins have built that depth. So that's one that I think, if everything goes right, they could be in that conversation too. But we also know that, of course, things aren't all going to go right for them.
You know who else was dynamite? I mean, Jesus Cesaro looked great in his
Yeah,
in his
shit, man,
return
I'm
back
forgetting
too.
it.
I mean, you could
Friend
just
of the
continue to
JB
go
show.
down. I just hope that the Marlins figure it out. I mean, they got all the talent in the world, right?
Oh my God, Luzardo is dynamite. Luzardo is dynamite. He looks so good. I'm sure they'll find a way to fuck it up though.
They'll find a way. Let's get to the next question because it does concern those Guardians. Number 2, should the Guardians make a run at Sean Murphy / what is the timeline for Bo Naylor? Asked by CWM Writes on Twitter, our guy, Chris Manning. Appreciate you, Chris. I want to answer quickly the Sean Murphy one, and then I want to ask you about Bo Naylor.
Sure.
Fuck yeah, Chris. Like, no shit, they should make a run. Are you kidding me? He's perfect. He's got years of control. He's one of the better defensive catchers in baseball. And of course, he'd hit leaving Oakland in front of 85 people who watch their games. You get him in a playoff race. He'd be phenomenal over there. I love Austin Hedges as a receiver of the baseball.
Yeah.
But
a great backup.
Outside of that, agreed. He's a great backup. But Sean Murphy would fit in so well, Chris. And you know it. I know it. Everyone in Cleveland knows it. But guess what, Chris? You know they're not going to do it. You know they're not going to do it because they don't want to get rid of any of their prospects. Why wouldn't they do it at the deadline? Possibly they do it, but maybe Bo Naylor is the answer, Arm.
Yeah, I love Bo Naylor. I really do. But, that's a guy that maybe you could stick somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know how he projects long-term behind the dish. He's been better at limiting the run game this year. So that might be part of the reason that they waited here, right? Is Bo Naylor has been swinging it so well, 22 years old, already putting up good numbers in AAA. Maybe they said, hey, let's wait here. Because if Naylor looks like he can be an option for us at the big league level, should we give up the house for Sean Murphy? Or should we, maybe put our package of prospects together for a different controllable young player? Because I would love Murphy with them. I would absolutely love Murphy with them. He helps their offense. He's obviously a phenomenal defensive catcher and has years of control and all the things you just said. But Naylor continues to look better and better and better. And every time I think he's going to slow down, he doesn't. So if they really believe in Naylor, and again, he continues to get better at controlling the run game. I can't speak to the framing, obviously. I haven't watched, him catch full games, but I would say that maybe they say, let's shift elsewhere and maybe look to make a big splash somewhere else. That said, please make a freaking splash, Guardians. Please.
Like, why
please,
wouldn't
please.
you?
But the timeline on Naylor, I think we can see him in September.
Really?
To answer that part of the question. And I think we will, because they want to know what they have here. Mm-hmm. And you have a month and change to find out what you've got with Bo Naylor and then decide what you want to do in the offseason. If that's the reason why they waited on Murphy and not because they're cowards and don't want to go all in, then I can have a little bit more, patience with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm still disappointed that they didn't make other moves. But yeah, I think they absolutely should. But at the same time, I could see them shifting elsewhere.
Yeah, to your point, the Bo Naylor excuse in quotes for all those watching on YouTube, that's fine if that's what you do, and then you make this splash for the catcher in the offseason. Maybe if Bo Naylor for some reason doesn't work out, or you don't think he's quite ready yet, or you use him in that package to go get a Sean Murphy. But that doesn't excuse you from not doing anything else when you're right in the middle of the hunt with a Twins team that we know hasn't truly proved it. Do we believe that they're the best team in the division now? Yeah, they did enough moves and they're probably going to win the division, and they should win the division. But in the playoffs, like, will they really be the team to make noise? More likely than no, not. Guardians have all the arms in the world. You have Jose Ramirez, who you're just wasting as one of the best overall players in the sport. The Guardians infuriate me. They infuriate me.
They really do, because I Cleveland is a great fan base, a great sports town. They deserve more, and hopefully they get more. The only benefit of the doubt they get is maybe they wanted to see what they have here down the stretch, but they could have made some small moves for some rentals that could help them over the stretch here. But is what it is.
Let's move to another team that infuriates you.
Yeah.
Number 3. Why isn't Sandy Alcantara getting more love for the NL MVP? Asked by Kazim the Dream 6 on Twitter. And remember, all the tags are in our episode description. Okay, let's quickly just go over where he is on odds. And I think this is a good kind of segue to just talk about the current MVP race as it stands today.
Yep.
Sandy Alcantara sits right at the same odds as CJ Crone and Dansby Swanson.
Yeah,
that seems criminal because he deserves to be higher. For example, I think he should be higher than Kyle Schwarber at plus 10,000.
Oh, yeah.
I think he should be higher than Frankie Lindor plus 6,600.
How many players are ahead of him?
We have, I'll just go through them. Dansby, Crone, Matt Olson, Kyle Schwarber, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, Nolan Arenado, Pete Alonso, Freddie Freeman, Austin Riley, Paul Goldschmidt. And that was in order from bottom to top of the odds from, worst to best in terms of like Paul Goldschmidt is minus 140 compared to Austin Riley, who's second at plus 600.
Yeah. So I honestly because I was going into this question kind of expecting to just be like, it's because the Marlins stink and, he can only do so much. He pitches every fifth day. I think for an ace to win the MVP, it's got to be one of those where he's leading one of the best teams in baseball and every fifth day is just pretty much racking.
Remember, it's narrative. A lot of this is narrative based.
As much as people want to pretend
player.
And that doesn't mean that we agree that it's narrative based.
Exactly.
But it just is what it is. So, I do think he deserves more love, though. I really do, because what he's doing this year from the standpoint of like complete games, from the standpoint of just going out there and eating innings for a team that you remove Sandy Alcantara from the Marlins, I mean, I don't know how many of the starts that he's pitched that they've won, but they're even worse. I mean, they're probably one of the bottom 5 teams in baseball. If Sandy Alcantara is not on the Marlins, he's got to get more love than he's getting. But at the end of the day, you've got to be putting up one of the more ridiculous seasons we've ever seen. And while it started that way, you got Justin Verlander in the AL doing something quite similar. 1.73 ERA. 130 innings versus Sandy's 158. But I mean, he's got him beaten ERA and also is doing it on a much better team. Justin Verlander might win 20 games this year. I think if he was the only guy with the sub 2 ERA, maybe I could say point towards that a little bit more, but Verlander's kind of matching a lot of what Sandy's doing right now for, again, a team that is much better. But I think just being stashed on a sinking ship doesn't really help for any pitcher's MVP odds.
Like there's a very cool stat, and I'm just pulling up the definition because I don't want to get it incorrect. I know what it means, but I'd rather read you the definition so we both know what we're talking about. Win probability added is a sports. It's a statistic. Let me look up the baseball definition because I'm looking at all. Yeah. WPA, or win probability added, quantifies the percent change in a team's chances of winning from one event to the other. For instance, a homer in one game is worth more than a home run in a blowout.
Yep.
Sandy Alcantara has a 4.39 win probability added. Max Fried is 2 at 3.47. Third is Verlander at 3.13. Corbin Burns 287, McClanahan 278, Martin Perez 27, 267, which is hilarious.
It's very funny.
He is a full point better than second place Max Fried. That's how much he's meant to winning ball games in crucial situations for a team like the Marlins. Like when we're looking at Justin Verlander's odds, he's also kind of lower. Like he's right now lower than Xander Bogaerts, Kyle Tucker, Tim Anderson, whose odds are going to drop now that he's injured, Jose Altuve, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Rafael Devers, Jose Ramirez, Yordan Alvarez, Shohei Ohtani, and then Aaron Judge is the largest favorite at minus 450. If Justin Verlander is not higher on this list, I know with the win probability added stat, like Sandy has been better, and I think Sandy has been better over the full season. Like we don't care about wins loss. We care about what we're seeing on the field, and Sandy has been better on the field than Justin Verlander has. It's close, of course, but to that point, it's not like Justin Verlander is that high either. You have to be so above and beyond everybody else to be considered the MVP for pitchers. I mean, the only ones I can remember are really Kershaw and Verlander in the past decade plus.
So here, one last question for you on this, and it might be a silly one, but do you think that the lack of strikeouts has anything to do with it? Like, do they want to see a 300 strikeout? Because Sandy's just not that.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what he does. That's why he goes deep into games. Like, is the fact that he's not racking up strikeouts at this insane level, do you think that works against him at all too?
I do, because that also, applies into his FIP, into his XFIP, XERA, all these different stats too that possibly you can look at.
We like counting stats still. Like the voters like counting stats. Like that's always going to matter. And if you say, oh, he's got 300 Ks and he's doing this and this and this, like it just adds to the narrative. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, that just might not be sexy enough for him.
I totally agree. And it's funny because Sandy throws 98 with a disgusting breaking ball. You'd think that he'd have more strikeouts than he does, but he just challenges you in the zone.
I don't think
you can't beat me.
I think he could if he wanted to.
I agree.
I think he'd rather you roll over on the first pitch.
That's not his job.
He can go 9 innings.
That's not his job. He's got the ghost of Zach Pop behind him.
Yeah.
Like he's got the ghost of Zach Pop, but he's got to go 8.
He's literally got to go the distance.
This question is impossible.
I love it. It's one of my favorite questions we've had in a long time, I think.
Whose trio is better when healthy? The Dodgers with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Trey Turner, or the Padres with Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, and Juan Soto? This was asked by Joshua D. Landis on Twitter. What a fucking question.
I love it. It's one of my favorite
questions. There is no wrong answer here. And I did a little bit more digging just into the numbers to kind of see where it stacks up. But throw the numbers out the window, especially because a guy like Fernando Tatis Jr. hasn't been healthy all year. We're going to assume that he's fully healthy.
Yes.
Like, who do you want? Those 3 Dodgers are in the top 15 in F4. Like, that's the reality of the situation. Freddie Freeman is 4th in baseball, at least on offense. Like, he's above Manny Machado. That's where these guys are. I would, but okay. This is really hard because by the numbers, you would probably say the Dodgers, and they're already all healthy. Trey Turner, Fernando Tatis Jr. Is Tatis Jr. more talented? Yes. Has Trey Turner performed almost as good as him? Also, yes.
Yeah.
You look at third base, first base, it's tougher. Third base, more premium position. But Freddie has been the better offensive player than Manny Machado has this year. Yeah. And if you're looking at previous years, probably still Freddie. Then you got the Mookie Betts versus Juan Soto debate. And what? I don't know. I would say Mookie Betts is a better all-around player than Juan Soto. But Juan Soto is probably a better hitter. What do you value? And you know what, Aram? I think Mookie Betts.
Yeah.
I don't love it, though. Crazy. I don't know.
I don't think that's crazy because, so Mookie took had that rough year last year, right? But obviously he's all the way back this year. And in the ways that he impacts the game, like I know that Soto is one of the best hitters, we've seen. But Mookie's so consistent now. I mean, really, aside from, I think what was a lost year last year for injuries, allergies, whatever the hell it was, 25 bombs. He's still in 8 bags. He's probably the best right fielder in baseball.
Could be the best center fielder if you wanted to.
If they wanted to put him there. Plays second base, even if you fucking need him to. 146 WRC plus. Like, I love what he brings to the game. He's such a value on the base paths as well, even if he's not just stealing bags. The thing is when Tatis is healthy, he's got best player in baseball upside.
Yep.
So like I think you can go Mookie as an all-around player for your team more than Soto. I think Tatis and Turner.
Probably take Tatis.
You take Tatis, even though Turner, you look at F4 and things like.
He's probably second best shortstop in baseball after Tatis.
Machado versus Freeman, what Freeman has done offensively this year. But Machado is also a fantastic defender at the hot corner. So it's like, I think with what Freeman is doing right now, which is basically being the best version of Freddie Freeman we've ever really seen, which is crazy because Freddie Freeman has already been insane. You could maybe point towards the MVP season in 2020. I don't really count that. So you look at 2022, this has been his best season ever in a lot of metrics. I think you gotta go with the Dodgers guys. I think you go with the Dodgers guys. The dynamic aspect of Mookie and Turner, plus what is one of the best hitters in the game too, and Freddie Freeman. I think I go Dodgers guys, but man, Tatis and Soto, we're passing on Tatis and Soto.
I know, what the fuck? That doesn't even make sense.
But also, like, what position is Tatis playing?
I don't know.
I'm hearing, we're hearing reports of like maybe
Right
outfield
field?
long
Yeah.
term. Like that would change things. I'm gonna go with the certainty. I'm going with the Dodgers trio, but don't get mad at me because I legitimately think it's the most impossible question to answer in the history of the world.
Let's heat it up a little bit. Who's a better player in baseball than Mookie Betts, not named Shohei Ohtani? Dustin and I were having this conversation,
Dude,
and he asked me this.
Dustin's in your
fan.
ear.
Yeah,
Dustin's
always in my ear.
Just like Mookie Betts is the best player on earth. It's like
I thought to myself, well, Trout when healthy, but then he responded, well, you can't say Trout right now.
Trout
I said,
when
okay,
healthy, obviously, but you can't say that right now.
And then I went quiet because I thought Soto
J-Ram's got a case.
Better than Mookie.
J-Ram's nuts, man.
Mookie's beyond what he brings on the field to the clubhouse.
I can't.
Leadership, the championship mentality, nothing you're going to see on the stat sheet, but then everything on the stat sheet is red. I think Mookie Betts is the best player in baseball, not named Shohei Ohtani. I do.
J-Ram's he's got him beat in F4, but he's also played 13 more games. If Betts played 13 more games, he'd surpass him in the F4 department. Switch hitter, steals more bags, doesn't hit as many home runs. Like that, yeah. I think when Mookie is at his peak, you could make the case. Like your argument is sound here. I agree with what you're trying to say here. I think Devers is scary, like getting in that department too. When
just
he's
not
healthy.
The defender these guys are, because also J-Ram's such a great defender. Mookie's one of the best defensive outfielders that we've seen in our lifetime.
I think with what Mookie's kind of bounced back and showed this year, it's funny because that's a guy whose cards, like I was thinking about it. If I luck into some more money, what would be like a big splash that I would make? I think Mookie would be the big splash because his cards still don't go for the same of like a Mike Trout. And I think he could be there, in a few years. Again, I think people forget how young Mookie Betts is too. He's still just 29 years old. It feels like he's been around forever. He's still got a lot more years of putting up really good seasons.
Mookie Betts is the Derek Jeter of our generation, but he's better.
In what way is he the Derek Jeter?
I think the universally loved player. The smile.
If he stuck with Boston, I'd be in.
Yeah, been in the limelight. Now, I guess you're right because Jeter played 20 years with the same team, so not in that kind of sense. But I don't think that we have like a Derek.
No one
Jeter.
has a negative.
No one has a negative thing to say about Jeter. I mean, you could be like, "Oh, defensive run save, debatable." Shut up.
Whatever.
Derek Jeter is one of the better shortstops ever. Wherever you want to rank him, I don't really care. Universally loved type player like that. The smile, championships, always in the limelight. Phenomenal player. That's what I view Mookie as. I mean, he's already a two-time champion. He's probably going to win more in his career. I mean, Jeter's at what, 5 championships? I could see Mookie having 5 championships, being a first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe approaching 3,000 hits. Like that's what I look at as a Mookie Betts. But Mookie Betts did everything offensively that Jeter could do, and he's one of the best defenders we've ever seen.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going to hit probably 400 homers. He has a chance to probably closer to 350. He's going to steal probably over 200 bags. Yeah, he's going to have one of those careers where he checks every single box. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Pretty freaking awesome. All right, we just got heated, or we didn't even get heated. That was a phenomenal, just kind of
hurt
thought process.
Yeah, it just hurt my brain. I don't know who's better than Mookie when he's right.
Number 5. Who is a team that is hurt right now that, when healthy, can make a little bit of noise for the rest of the year? Asked by @LilDJ227 on Twitter. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, I think we'll have different answers for this one too.
I think we will have different answers for this one. And I've been saying this same team now for a while, and I don't really want to move off of them because I still think when Wander Franco comes back, right, that the Rays, when they get fully healthy, are going to make some noise here. I don't think they've been fully healthy basically all year. They just got Brandon Lau back. When some of the pitchers come back too, Springs has been hurt. I know he's been back, but just overall as a team, as a unit, getting fully healthy, I do think that they're going to make some noise as we move into September and October. Who was another team that came to your mind that could make some noise when healthy?
Well, actually, first I want to talk about that because I think it's really forgotten. Like, I'm guilty of it too. Overlooked how banged up the Rays have been. Beyond just Brandon Lau, this guy had 40 homers last year. Like, this guy was one of the best second basemen in the game, and also was one of the more productive hitters. Wander Franco was playing at one of the highest levels we've seen of a shortstop in the game, and that is a huge loss. You talk about Shane Baz being out of the equation here, the relievers that they've had banged up. Yeah, if this team is healthy, they are still the freaking Rays, right? They still basically have all of the pieces that they had. That is a team that's been way more banged up than I think people really would give them credit for. Even Kevin Kiermaier, they go get Jose Siri, but they've had to piece it together in the outfield without some of their typical guys as well. Funny enough, the Phillies have been playing great baseball. Obviously they're 9-1 in their last 10, and that's without Bryce Harper. Yeah, that's without the MVP. Now they're finally getting a little bit more out of some of their other guys. Gene Segura just now coming back. That's one of the guys that I think is one of the more overlooked consistent hitters in baseball. I mean, he's a career, just almost every single year is going to give you above average offense and just not strike out and put the ball in play and give you 3 to 4 FWAR. I think he had 1.6 FWAR season. That's a guy that's going to help them big time versus what they were getting before. And then if they get Bryce Harper back and healthy, they're going to make some noise because I like what we're seeing from Hoskins now. He is taking his game to the next level. Schwarber's got 34 pumps. Real Muto has been playing much more like JT Real Muto of late. And you look at what they're getting now from Castellanos. He's finally looking like he's a hitter again. You add an MVP to that team, they're in business. I can't believe what the Phillies are doing right now.
Let's switch over to another question because it's kind of similar but asked by a different person, and I had to put them back to back. What playoff contending team is the most fragile? One injury to a key player really hurts their chances of competing. And when I thought about this question, starting pitching wins championships. And who is a starting pitcher loss away from really not being that relevant in a playoff race? And I came to two teams.
I got two.
The Toronto Blue Jays.
Correct.
And the Minnesota Twins.
Ooh, okay. I got my second one that's different.
Perfect.
But you might not even consider them contenders.
Oh, that could be true. With the Minnesota Twins, they are, it's Tyler Mahle, it's Sonny Gray, it's Chris Archer, it's Dylan Bundy. Am I forgetting anyone off the top of my head?
Joe Ryan.
That's not a trio, I would say, with Ryan, Gray, and Mahle. If one of them is to go down, they ain't doing nothing. I don't really think that they're going to do a crazy amount with them, but at least that gives you a trio where you have a chance to win against anybody. Because those three, if they give you good starts,
they're good starters.
And with the offense, you have a chance to win. The Toronto Blue Jays, if Manoah or Gausman goes down, the offense will not be able to hit enough. With Kikuchi being so inconsistent, with Barrios being so inconsistent, that's the clear one we probably both had. Who was the other team that you wanted to throw in there?
The Jays are toast. If Alek Manoah goes down, they're absolute toast. I was looking at the Milwaukee Brewers, and I know they're fading quickly, but if Corbin Burns gets hurt,
it's over.
They're toast, man. I know I like some of their other arms. Don't get me wrong, but they need a Cy Young caliber starter at the top of their rotation for them to be successful. That's what they're built on. And now that they traded Josh Hader away, now that we're seeing them scuffle a little bit, I imagine the Brewers without Corbin Burns, I'd basically write them off. I wouldn't even pay attention to them that much anymore.
I agree. Is there any other team like offensively? When I was thinking offense, like, I mean, you said it yourself, the Phillies lost Bryce Harper and they're 9-1 in the past 10 games.
I would have said the Phillies. I would have said the Phillies losing Bryce Harper. So I would have been wrong. Like, I'm telling you, I would have said that and been wrong, clearly.
That's why I feel like you have to evaluate the starting pitching, because when you lose an offensive player, I mean, if the Yankees lost Aaron Judge, it certainly wouldn't be good. Yeah. But I do still think that overall the team would still make the playoffs and they'd still be fine, that they'd be able to piece it together. They still have a bunch of other offensive weapons. That's why I looked at starting pitching. But is there any team, because the Astros lose Verlander and they're going to get McCullers Jr. back, and then they still have a slew of guys. They'll be fine. The Dodgers, doesn't even matter that they lost Walker Buehler. They're the best team in baseball. The Padres, if they were to lose Musgrove, they still have enough starting pitching to be okay. Yep. The Cardinals, if they were to lose Wainwright, that would really be tough. But now that they have Jamon and Quintana, and Michaelis has been almost better than Wainwright has, they didn't fall into that bucket for me. They have enough. Even Matt's too. They have enough depth there, even Palante, and when Flaherty comes back. So those were really the three teams. I'm glad you threw the Brewers in. The reason I didn't throw the Brewers in is I'm like, I think the Phillies might make the playoffs now instead of the Brewers.
That's
the Brewers
what I'm saying. Like,
are so embarrassing.
One position player, I guess, could be J-Rod to the Mariners, who I know he's missed some time, but let's say he missed a prolonged amount of time. That's their most dynamic player, right? Like, and it's not really necessarily close.
Ty France.
Ty France is dynamic, but that's their first baseman, right? So it's like Eugenio Suarez and Ty France have been the other two, best hitters. It's a bit of a fall off from there. If they lost J-Rod for the rest of the season, I think they'd be in big trouble because of what he does for them in center. He stole 21 bags. He's hit 18 homers, sitting for average now. Like, that's a guy that I think, if he missed a prolonged amount of time, they'd be in trouble. But I think with the guys we mentioned, the teams we mentioned, those are the favorites.
J-Rod is just Ronald Acuna Jr. 2.0.
Yep. He's playing better than him now.
Probably bigger.
Yeah.
Might be better. We'll see. Maybe not. We're going to talk about the Braves in a little bit. This is a great one. Before we get into our last question, where we're kind of talking top fives, but it's centered around the Braves, but it's going to open up a great conversation. But before we get to that, number 7, if you could have any player, dead or alive, on your podcast for a full hour and they had to tell the truth, who would it be and why? The way I thought about this question is had to tell the truth.
Yeah, that was an important caveat. Yes. Not even caveat, like detail.
Not just who's the greatest, but like, I'd love to have Babe Ruth. I'd love to have Jackie Robinson. I'd love to have Willie Mays. I'd love to have Satchel Paige. Like, of course, I'd love to have all these guys. But the player that I came to,
who?
I want Pete Rose to tell the truth.
Oh, God. About gambling?
Just about everything that happened. Yeah, I mean, you could say gambling, you could say a lot of things. I just want to hear the truth.
And like, are we allowed to just be very mean to him the whole time?
You know what? It's our podcast. I think we're going to interpret the question however we want. Like, we get the truth out. I would want to talk to Pete Rose. Who would you want to talk to?
So I have 2.
Okay.
I want to talk to Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Great one.
And ask why the hell he threw a World Series. Great. Like, I know they've talked about it a little bit, but I would love to just really unpack the whole thing.
Yes.
And really hear the whole thing. I'd love to know if Pete Rose actually bet, for or against. I know they've done all those investigations, and that's one too. But I would love to really just know all of the details of that scandal. And really just get into his head there, because I know Shoeless Joe was one of the guys who his numbers were great in the World Series. Other guys threw it more specifically. So why were Shoeless Joe's? He hit 375 in the World Series, but was part of the scandal. So like, I just want to hear more about that. Then a much
Wait,
lamer one.
before you give it just a little bit of context about that, that was the 1919 Black Sox scandal, baseball scandal. For any of our younger viewers who may
Yeah.
not be aware of who Shoeless Joe Jackson is, the Black Sox scandal is the name given to the conspiracy to fix the 1919 World Series played between the White Sox and the Reds. And a number of players on those White Sox teams conspired with gamblers to throw or intentionally lose games in which what is now known as most likely the biggest scandal in baseball history outside of like the steroids and even the sticky stuff.
I think
Like,
throwing the World Series is like the basement of sport. Like that's the
yes,
worst thing anyone's ever. Like that just ruins everything. Like if that happened again, like I couldn't tell you the disdain I would have for those players, right? Like
I like how we're
just
getting into this. It's not just, oh, we'd love to have like Jackie Robinson on. Of course we would, but like, who do we really
no, I
want
want to know.
back?
Like it's
Yeah.
more like were dinosaurs real? Like like there's
Yes.
things that like, obviously they were real, but like what did they look like? How'd they die? That's what that was like. How did dinosaurs die? Like those are the questions I have. None of these baseball players can answer that. But on a more current side of things, I would love to just talk to Alex Rodriguez about why the hell he took steroids. Because I was talking about this the other day. He was so fucking good. He could have been the best. We should be talking about Alex Rodriguez as one of the 5 best players ever played the game, and arguably the best shortstop ever. He did everything. He could run, he could hit for average, he could hit for power. This guy was unbelievable. And he basically just couldn't help but continue to inject roids into his arm. I would just love to know why he felt he had such a dependency on it, because like what did he need that edge for? He was already so damn good. I know for Barry Bonds, it was like the pursuit of the home run title, and that's why he did it more down the stretch. Why did A-Rod do it from like the jump? You talk about biogenesis. I would love to know all of the details of how that happened, how young he started doing it, why he did it, because we've never gotten the truth from A-Rod on all of that. And he still would have been one of the greatest to ever play, I think, if he never juiced. But Shoeless Joe takes the cake, no doubt.
There's also one where it's not really in the scandal type. I would just love to hear about the Negro League. So if I could talk to Pop Lloyd or a guy like Satchel Paige, just to not, that's more not in the
I
tell the
would love to hear
truth, but
legends
to
of
be
the.
able to hear from Josh Gibson or any of those type of guys, like what was going on
The
there.
talent.
Because more than likely, those guys were so far more talented than anything that we saw during that time period in Major League Baseball.
There was a handful of guys that probably would have been some of the best players in Major League Baseball, and like that's the frustrating part. And I would love to just ask Satchel Paige how old he actually was.
Yes.
Because
Probably
no
50.
one really knows. Legit, like pitched at Miami Stadium, Miami Marlins Stadium. It was like a minor league team at the time, like 50 years old in front of a sold out crowd. It's one of the coolest things ever in the 1950s. No one knew how old he actually was. Some think that he might have been 60 when he was pitching on that mound. Like, and all he did was put Tiger Balm on his arm. So like that's a guy I would love to ask questions to. Also, I've thought about that from like a historical lens. Like one of the things I would love to know is how the dinosaurs went extinct. But on the baseball side, I would want to use this opportunity to solve some of baseball's biggest mysteries. And I think Satchel Paige's age is one of them, and Shoeless Joe and just all of the details of the Black Sox scandal is another one.
Shout out Kyle Taylor Portraits on IG. Shohei's right behind me. He made that one phenomenal question. Transitioning from some of the greatest players in past history to some of the best players in current times. The last question: do the Braves have a top 5 infielder at each position? If so, where would you rank that player at their position? Lastly, where is Max Fried ranked among starters? And that was asked by Jake Franklin on Twitter. This is an interesting one, Aram. And I kind of have a hot take, but I don't really know how hot of a take is it. I think it might just be the answer here.
Okay.
I think they have one.
Ooh. Okay.
You can make the argument for 2 on the corners. I think Austin Riley is a top 5 third baseman.
Yes.
Absolutely. When you have J Ram, it's just off the top of my head. You know what? Let me be a little bit better at this. I have a list of third basemen in front of me. Let me tell you why I think third base. Arenado's got to be in there. Jose Ramirez got to be in there. Manny Machado's got to be in there. Devers has got to be in there, and Austin Riley's got to be in there. That's your clean 5.
Yep.
Definitely, he's in the top 5. I don't even know where to rank him. I 5,
It's
2.
fine. He's
I don't
yeah,
know.
because if he continues on this track that he's on right now, he might surpass some guys. But yeah, he's definitely in the top 5.
So Dansby Swanson is number 1 in F4. But like, I'm still gonna have Tatis in my top 5. I'm not kicking Tatis out because he's been injured this year. I'm still taking Trey Turner.
Yeah.
I think I'm still gonna put Correa in my top 5. Like, are we kicking him out
Yeah.
now?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, let's frame it like this.
Yes.
You can have you can sign one player to a 10-year deal for free. Who are you signing? Carlos Correa or Dansby Swanson?
Carlos Correa.
Correct. So then there's your answer.
I'd rather have Trey Turner. Like I said, I'd
No doubt.
probably rather have Francisco Lindor.
Yep.
Would you rather have Corey Seager?
Yeah.
I would.
He's doing this. Yeah.
I mean, Corey Seager's got a 3.5 WAR. It's not that far off. He's got 24 home runs.
And also,
I know he's hitting 250.
This is a contract year for Swanson. He's been phenomenal. But
yeah. Seager's got a 124 WRC plus compared to Dansby at a 125.
Yeah. And Seager's doing it in a worse lineup. I would say you could boot Swanson, though he's right on the fringes here. Olsen's got to be a top 5 first baseman, even with a down year this year, though, right?
Probably. So here's what I was looking at for first base. I mean, Freddie, Paul Goldschmidt, Pete Alonso, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Those are the 4. Do you count Luis Arise? Is he better than Matt Olson? Maybe not.
This year, yes. Maybe. I'm still regarding Matt Olson as a top 5 first baseman, right? So
probably should.
But like he's been down.
Like, what about Seth Brown?
I'm looking at him like not far off in F4. Yeah, I think that's even like what Josh Bell's done this year, but I think you still got to regard Matt Olson as a top 5. So I would say, and then second base, dude, I'm not considering Ozzie Albies. I know he's hurt, but even healthy, I'm not considering Ozzie Albies a top 5 second base. I've always been lower on Albies. I think we all have. And now with what Andres Jimenez is doing, I presume he's made a majority of his starts where at second this year. Yeah, he has. Jimenez has got to be ahead of Albies, maybe at least very soon, if not already.
McNeil's been much better.
Edmund, McNeil,
Altuve, back. Gavin Lux is fucking awesome.
If Jazz Chisholm was healthy, I think I'd take him over Ozzie Albies.
You could say Semien.
Yeah, I would for sure. John Birdie. 1.9 F4 in 58 games, by the way.
Here's an interesting one. Would you rather have Glaber or Ozzie Albies?
Glaber.
The thing is with Ozzie Albies is it's the extra base hits, right? It's the home runs, it's the doubles, and the speed. And there's sexy counting numbers. But when we look at a bigger sample, and he is a really good defender. Like we kind of just threw a lot of guys. And I bet Braves fans are listening to this being like, he's not better than all you guys named. Like, Jeff McNeil is not better. He hasn't performed, but it's like Jeff McNeil has performed better this year. And it's like, yeah, he's hitting 304, and he's just been such a good defender over there at second. He's so much more versatile too. Ozzie Albies shouldn't be a switch hitter. So if you give me the switch hitter argument, I think he shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, that doesn't help
from one side. So Ozzie Albies is in that conversation in the top 10, but he's not top 5.
Year. He was 9th in F4 last year.
That's all we have to say.
He hit 30 pumps. Like, he won 2020, sure, but he still only finished with a 310 on base percentage. You know, like, I would still take several guys over him. I'm sorry. So, but all that to say, like, it's the Braves have as much depth as anybody. They're great at they're above average at basically every position. Dansby, you could make the case at the end of the year that he's a top 5 guy. I wouldn't be upset with anybody saying that after what Dansby did this year, he's a top 5 shortstop. I think he needs to do more than do it in one contract year to surpass most of the other shortstops that are so proven. But at the same time, I mean, like, they're loaded at every spot. And I'll take Olsen and I'll take Riley as top 5 guys.
I think you're right. I think I was looking at the top 5, even Abreu in terms of F4 is ahead. He's number 3, but I would still take Matt Olson. I would take Matt Olson over Ty France. Luis Arraez is interesting because, the guy has the least amount of strikeouts in baseball. Kyle Schwarber has more home runs than Luis Arraez has strikeouts. That's the real stat.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Luis Arraez has just been the best contact hitter we've seen in our league in a very long time. So that's a reason I wanted to put him, but he doesn't play a lot of his games at first base. He does, but not, every single game. He's not a first baseman. So you'd put Matt Olson there. Like, he's earned it. I'm not going to take him off. You're right on that. The next part of the question is the Max Fried debate. And when we were talking about win probability added, Max Fried was number 2. That means something. So I think it's just a discussion of, is he top 5, not is he top 10, really? And we're talking about left-handed starters. It's Shane McClanahan, then
Fried?
Probably. When it all comes down to it, Kershaw's still that fucking dude.
Yeah. I think at this point, right, I think he's a top 10 arm.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you'd peg him? Top 10?
So I think McClanahan's better. I think Sandy's better.
Yep.
I think Burns is better. I think Verlander is better. I think Wheeler is better. Is Garrett Cole better? I'm fine saying fuck no. I don't care.
So. I don't think so at this juncture.
I'm fine with that. I don't even care. Good.
I don't think so at this juncture.
I don't think so either. I think you're right. But stuff wise and peripherals, it's still so good. But
it's good,
dude, you're giving up home runs every day.
Max Fried doesn't have those blow up outings, man. He just doesn't. That's an ace.
It's an ace. Max Fried won a chip.
You said Verlander, right?
Yeah, I said Verlander. that's
he's top 10. So he's no doubt top 10.
Top 10. I just think there's some other interesting names that I kind of want to go over here.
Like Manoah. Where do you put
Manoah?
Manoah.
Give me Fried over Manoah.
Yeah.
Give me Fried over Framber. Give me Fried over Gosman. Give me Fried over Bieber. Give me Fried over Logan Webb.
Yep.
Who else? I would take Fried over Cease.
A healthy Walker Buehler.
That's the exact rank where I think he is.
Yep. Which is top
7. Yeah.
So he's a top 10 pitcher in this game.
Yeah, he is. He's better than Arias.
Which is crazy. Urias is kind of taking a step back this year.
He's 9th in ERA, dude.
I know, which is crazy.
I know,
but he's kind of taking a step back.
I know. He's going to 2.57.
He's been good. I was expecting him to be like Max Fried this year.
I know.
The Braves rotation, man, if Ian Anderson can figure it out, it's going to be good for a long time. That's a dark horse answer for our older question, because Max Fried is getting better with age. As he gets closer to 30 years old, continues to get better. Spencer Strider is only going to get better and already is fantastic. Kyle Wright has proven to be a pretty darn good 3. Morton obviously won't be pitching in 3 years. Ian Anderson, you'd hope, would figure it out in 3 years, but they've also got some other, interesting pitching prospects as well. The Braves are going to be good for a long time, man.
Yeah, they will be.
Kind of just to wrap up this question here. The Mets, to me, have that peak value of where they could win a World Series in the next 3 years. But what are the Mets going to look like in 3 or 4 years? Scherzer is going to be retired. DeGrom will either be gone or slowed down. You're not going to have Starling Marte. There's going to be some other integral pieces that are gone. Mark Canha will be gone. Who knows what they'll do with Nimmo. I could see the Braves just running the division for the next decade. After maybe next year could be the Mets again, but after that, I could see the Braves doing what they did with Bobby Cox.
At the same time, though, the Braves don't have one thing that the Mets have: a $13 billion wallet.
That's facts. Yeah.
So it's we're looking at the Mets thinking, yes, they're playing to win right now, but they're going to continue to play to win right now. And that's why you got Stevie Cohen and his big bucks facing off against a potential dynasty of young guys who are already wrapped up in terms of contract value. It's just going to be
a blast.
And then the Phillies, with the Phillies being able to keep a lot of their young prospects too, they're kind of playing to win right now.
Harper's not going anywhere. He's going to be good for a long time. Castellanos, I still believe in. Schwarber, like those guys are still going to be good for 3 more years. Like that, Bohm looks like a piece all of a sudden again, and then Mick Abel, Andy Painter. They've got some good pieces too. Nola's still young. Like Wheeler is older, but he'll still be good for a few years. The NL East is going to be a problem.
And the Marlins have Charles LeBlanc.
Charles LeBlanc is nasty.
He is.
Have you seen what this guy's doing?
Yes, I have. And it's
Marlins
funny.
fans are like acting like this is the biggest thing in the world.
Ryan Lavarnway, who we had on the podcast, he was talking about guys, prospects to look out to. His first hitter was Charles LeBlanc.
Did he really say that?
Yes, he was like, watch out for this guy. He can really swing it. Immediately calls up, sent me a DM, be like, did you see Charles LeBlanc? And I'm like,
I missed that.
Yeah, I saw Charles LeBlanc. He's been crazy.
Well, you know what the funniest part is about that? To wrap up, people were hounding Craig Mish, who's going to be on the show, I think, in the coming weeks. Because I just want to get his thoughts on like all of the deadline reports and everything. But they were asking him, hey, why aren't the Marlins calling up Charles LeBlanc? Like, why aren't they calling him up? Why aren't they calling him up? Like, they're starting Willian Astudillo out there. Why won't they call up Charles LeBlanc, who's hitting like 350 in AAA? And he literally kept digging. He finally reached out to his contacts, and he said, the Marlins don't believe in Charles LeBlanc. That was when I realized he was going to be good and he could be pretty decent. And look at what he's doing, man. Like he's already got a 0.4 FWAR, which is better than a lot of guys that have seen a lot of plate appearances for the Marlins. Yeah, he's been a breath of fresh air for them. I'll say that.
And that'll do it for this episode of the Just Baseball Show. Use code PRIZEPICKS in order to get a full match on your deposit. Join our chalkboard group chat. That's in our episode link description as well. Go check out Arm's podcast, The Call Up, for all of your prospect needs. Continue. Hey, he's breaking down the top 100 update is coming out soon. And also Jack joins him too. So if you guys want to hear them talk more deeply about the minor leagues and prospects, I also host a podcast called Not Gambling Advice, MLB Best Bets 5 days a week, as well as you can read my full article on justbaseball.com. And we're almost at 500 5-star reviews, Arm. I saw on Spotify. Wow. Anyone listening on Spotify can get us up there. We would greatly appreciate it. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying all the content. The reason we do it is for you guys. Everything's free. You don't got to pay for anything. All we ask is for your love and support, and you've given it to us so far. Thank you guys so much. Anything else before we say goodbye?
I was going to say, we, if there is one thing, if you do want to support Just Baseball, we have some new merch dropping, which I've never thought I'd actually say that phrase. But it's just a dope long sleeve tee, getting good reviews on it. I've given some to a couple, any players that go on the podcast, we'll give them some long sleeve athletic tees. We've been getting some asks for athletic long sleeve tees. They're fire, and they're hitting the store, I think, by the time you're listening to this. So keep an eye out on the Just Baseball store on our website. I think we're also going to blast it out on our Twitter, but there's some new hats, some fire long sleeve tees, and that's a great way to rep JB and also help us out and support us if you enjoy that.
And with that, thank you, everybody.